Mr. Keith and Claire, thank you for joining us here at the Natural Critics' Choice. Could you tell us more about, well, at present, what it takes to to run a business like the way it is today, and the terroir behind it?
Thanks, Robin. Well,
Thank you, Robin.
maybe I can start. So Mosswood is, in fact, the second oldest vineyard in Margaret River, but that, of course, doesn't make us all that old at all in vineyard terms. The Margaret River is a very recent phenomenon. In fact, the original planting there was in 1967. Mosswood planted 1969, makes it the second oldest. The region started because an academic from the University of Western Australia, Dr. John Gladstone, had done some extensive study on viticulture around the world and formulated some ideas on temperatures and climates and so on, and their suitability for different wine styles. And on the basis of that, he recommended that grapes should be planted in Margaret River, and in particular the Bordeaux grape varieties, Cabernet Sauvignon being the main one, because of the suitability of the maritime climate Margaret River has. So Bill,
Consistency.
and the consistency that goes with that. So Bill and Sandra Pannell established Mosswood, as we said, planted in 1969. Its first vintage was 1973. Then my first vintage there was in fact 1979. So I'm a graduate of the Roseworthy College in South Australia. An institution that's trained a lot of Australian winemakers, and I went to work in Margaret River for Bill and Sandra, and then as things turned out in 1984, Claire and I by then were married, and we took over Mosswood via leasing it from the Pannells, and then in 1985 we bought it from them. So at that stage Mosswood was approximately 10 hectares in total, so obviously a relatively small vineyard, and our production was approximately 3,500 cases. And then we gradually expanded that, added small pieces to the vineyard, and it's now at roughly 14 hectares and producing around 6,000 to 7,000 cases. In addition to that, in 2000 we bought a vineyard just down the road from us, about 1.5 kilometres south, a property called Ribbon Vale, and that's roughly 8 hectares. So in total we have 22.5 hectares in the region, and producing around 13,000 cases of wine.
Now, in terms of production-wise, what is your philosophy of a great terroir? Because you have been producing wine for some time right now, and looking back, what is your reflections of a good terroir versus the new world?
What do you think, my dear?
I think choosing the right site in the right place. In our case, we are in the Williagrup sub-region of Margaret River, and we are only approximately 1.5 kilometres from the ocean, the Indian Ocean, which is a very large body of water which ameliorates the temperature and keeps a constant temperature, a moderate temperature in the area, and the soils on our particular vineyard, both Mosswood and Ribbonvale, are gravelly loam soils, and they're to varying degrees, on average about 6 foot deep, and then there's a clay subsoil. So this provides great drainage for the substantial amount of rainfall that we get, and the clay subsoil retains the moisture. And so we're both vineyards are dry land viticulture, and the substantial amount of rainfall that we get is about 1,000 millimetres, and we get it from April to October, and the soil remains moist throughout the summer season, and you don't have to scratch very deep to get some soil moisture. And being dryland viticulture, it allows our vines to get their roots down into the ground and tap into that moisture during the growing season and the great ripening season as well. So I think I've gone a long way around to describe that this is our terroir. The weather is right, the climate is right. We are in a good area with a good, moderate and consistent climate for growing grapes, and we have a good soil structure on our sides for growing particularly good grapes of the varieties that we choose, which are Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Semillon and Chardonnay, and their blended varieties.
And what are the challenges that you face when you have these vineyards, when you bought over, these different parts of the land? Do you face the challenges of having to observe new soils and replacing them for some instance, and as well as parasites? How do you get rid of parasites?
Well, we're reasonably lucky. In terms of, say, vine pests, the region is largely free of them. We have some complications associated with pests like garden weevil and so on, but all of which are easily managed. So in terms of the preparation of the soil to plant the vineyard and then maintain it, the answer is we're lucky. There's not much in the way of pest management that causes a problem. But then, on the other hand, we have to maintain our soils and look after them. Obviously, they're crucial to the health of the vine and the quality of the grapes we get. And so we're very careful in terms of maintaining good soil structure and also using compost and mulching and so on to improve and maintain soil fertility. So whilst we're lucky in many respects, we also have to work at it.
Now, moving forward, right now, the fun part of the show is about your wines. For the wine tasting notes for this year and next year, could you give us some insights on this?
Well, I guess if you look at first of all the 2013 vintage, so obviously the point being that over the next year or so we'll be releasing wines from the 13, 12 and 11 vintages. And in fact we've just released one from the 10. So we've got a range of different seasons that we can talk about. But briefly, Margaret River has been very fortunate with back to and including 2007 with consistent warm seasons without too much excessive heat. So we've had a run of significant quality, which is unprecedented really in our history. So the 13, whilst it was a year where crops were reduced because of hail damage during springtime in 2012, the season itself proved to be one of consistent warmth without excessive heat. So all the varieties have produced good fruit flavours and good complexity. And so, for example, this year we'll be releasing 2013 Mosswood Semillon, and it shows all the classic features we associate with our Semillon: bright lemon and fig fruit notes, good acidity, medium to full body on the palate. So typically Mosswood Semillon, a wine with good drinking now but potential for the future. And then as we go back looking at the other vintages, for example, current release of Chardonnays from 2011 and 2011, very similar to 2013, although crops were slightly larger. Once again, a good season with consistent warmth, and in that case we produced a Chardonnay with typically peach-like fruit characters, some citrus notes, maybe limes and grapefruit. Chardonnay is slightly different though because it's aged in barrels for 18 months, and so there's the influence of the oak and the oak aging, so there's interesting toasty and cheesy and other notes in the wine. Similarly with the Semillon, full body, quite rich in flavours, but still with fresh acidity. So an exciting year in terms of quality. And then our premier wine, our flagship wine, I'd say, which is Mosswood Cabernet Sauvignon. That's from the 2010 vintage. And 2010 certainly ranks as one of Margaret River's very finest. We put the 2010 Mosswood Cabernet Sauvignon probably in our top handful of wines. And it was a season that was really consistent in terms of the warmth. Once again, no excessive heat, so good ripeness. And when we have years where the temperatures aren't excessive, the wines retain relatively pretty aromatics. So Cabernet Sauvignon in 2010's got lots of mulberries, violets, raspberries, pomegranates to give a significant lift in the aroma. But underneath it's quite complex, so more than 2 years in barrel means that there's interesting tarry and leathery notes, so bright but complex. And the palate has a full body, lots of dark fruit notes, so mulberries again, and some plum, and good length, and also, because of the season, nice ripe tannin structure, so firm but not aggressive. So yeah, exciting quality for us.
And speaking about quality, could you tell us, to our viewers, about why you chose your career to be in the in the winery business? Because it's a lot of people would like to tend to ask themselves, is this my destiny? Yes.
Well, I think for me, it just looked like an interesting job. I grew up at a place called McLaren Vale in South Australia, and my family wasn't in wine, but because McLaren Vale as a community had lots of wine families, they were friends, and I personally thought they led interesting lives, and I think that's what attracted me to it. And then going to Margaret River, although it was a very young region when I went there, it was exciting because of the potential it showed, and there was also great surfing in Margaret River, and I was a keen surfer when I was young, and so I see there were several reasons for going and doing what I did. But look, the wine industry is a lot of fun. We're in an industry, aren't we, where our customers, when they're enjoying our product, we're really privileged almost to share what would you call it? It's a happy experience consuming wine, isn't it?
I always say that we're very privileged to be able to participate in, our job allows us to participate in other people's leisure, and it's great fun to share that with them.
And Claire, Miss Claire Mumford, there's a question I think by many women around the world, and that is, why did you choose to be in this business of wine and running a vineyard? Because you could have chose to be a housewife.
She's a nurse.
And, yes, and a nurse, and you would stay on in a very comfortable job, but rather than being in the farm. Don't you think that life is hard in the farm?
Look at her, poor woman.
I fell in love with a winemaker and vineyard, and we were privileged enough to have an opportunity to work on a very good vineyard site, and to work with grapes that produce very, very fine wine. So it has been a privilege. As Keith said, I was a nurse. I enjoyed that, and I have always been very interested in science and agriculture. And I like the land. It's nice to be out it's nice to be out on the land, and in particular in the vineyard, and enjoy working hard and getting the satisfaction from doing the job properly. And the same goes in the winery. When Keith and I first started working together, I felt like I was back in the hospital because I was taking temperatures of the wine and taking samples to analyse. Looking after baby wine is a bit like looking after patients, and it's very rewarding to see the finished product.
And speaking about the finishing product, and also did you describe the grapes as your babies? What will be the one leadership skill that you like the women around the world watching this and able to learn from you? What will be the one thing that you have learned from your experience running this winery, other than giving up everything and doing this?
Oh, you don't have to give up everything. You can do lots of. You can have an extremely broad life doing the things that you love. We, as I say, we're very privileged with the site we have. We grow good grapes. We like to think that we make extremely fine wine. We have 4 children. There's 17. Imogen's 17. Hugh is 19.
She's not actually. She's 18.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. She's just turned 18. Imogen's 18. Hugh is 19. Tristan is 22.
23, actually.
23. No, he's not. No, he hasn't turned.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, he hasn't turned 23. See, I got that one. Tristan's 23 and Eloise is 25, and I'd like to think they're happy and they're all on the way to having successful careers of their own. I have had it all, and I intend to have more.
So what will be the future of Mosswood? Do you have any plans for any succession plans in place?
Well, we've always said to the children if they want to be involved, they can, and they're keen. I mean, Mosswood is the place where they grew up, and so they have more than a passing interest in it. And so our eldest daughter helps Claire and me with promotional activities for Mosswood and things like that. Even she's actually a lawyer, but she still assists with that sort of thing with us. Our 2 sons are both studying viticulture and enology at Adelaide University, and so they obviously quite like the idea of being involved in the industry, but we're not pressuring them to come home and work with mum and dad. If that's how it works out, well, that's good, but if not, that's too bad. And our youngest daughter's only just started university, studying commerce, and so she likes being at home, but I don't know whether she sees herself as being involved in the wine industry. She
is also studying French with her commerce degree, and I think that might just be an inkling of an interest in the wine industry.
Oh.
Because of course we often take our lead from the French wine industry.
For our viewers who wanting to come over to Mosswood and visit, what will be your recommendation to a good restaurant close to your vineyard?
I can give you 2, and they're not just good, they're great. We have Studio Bistro in Yallingup, and the Laundry in Bustleton, which is a strange name, but it is a little bit of Melbourne. If any of your viewers are familiar with the Melbourne restaurant scene, well, a Melbourne Lane restaurant has been picked up and deposited in the middle of Bustleton, and they're both excellent restaurants, and I couldn't recommend them more highly.
Amazing. And Mr. Keith, would you care to share with us, for our viewers, for those individuals who are wanting to plan to buy a vineyard, what will be your 3 key advice to look out for a good vineyard as a good investment?
Don't invest in a vineyard.
Well, I think perhaps, look, you've got to go into viticulture with your eyes wide open, and look, our industry is not very profitable. It's a curious thing that the very best vineyards around the world are very prestigious, and so to own a famous vineyard, no matter where you are, Margaret River or any of the other key regions in the world, the very best vineyards are very expensive. But the curious thing, of course, is that they're not very profitable. So the decision for any investor in wine is to think really hard about how much of the wine experience that you enjoy apart from profitability. And so if you enjoy growing plants and working in the natural environment, if you enjoy the challenges of production, and also if you enjoy the challenges of the wine business, which of course are, you know, the fact that it's international, it's very competitive, and you know, it's an industry that requires you to maintain your standards in quality terms. I mean, if you're comfortable with all of those challenges and you find them rewarding, then a wine industry investment is for you. On the other hand, if you are really interested in making a lot of money, my advice is don't buy a vineyard. Instead, invest wisely in something else and buy good wine from these other good vineyards that you know about, and then enjoy them that way. That's my advice.
And it would be my advice too. There's an old joke about vineyards and wineries, and it goes along the lines of how do you make $1 million out of a winery and vineyard or vineyard? And the answer is you start off with 5.
Bad joke, Robin, but good one.
Oh, and why do you say start with 5?
Well,
Because you lose money.
So you've made $1 million because you've actually started off with $5 million.
Yeah, it's tongue-in-cheek, Robin. But
Sorry.
Okay. But, well, Mr. Keith and Claire Mumford, could you share with us, before we close, what will be one key advice in terms of leading your vineyards? You know, what is your key to your success?
it's not really one thing, Robin.
Or a few things?
I mean, to make a really good wine, several things have to coincide, and so you need a good season. The weather has to be good for you. You need good people, because you can't run a vineyard on your own, and you need people to do all the jobs as well as they can. And you need a little bit of inspiration. As an individual in the winemaking, you need to have an understanding of good wine style, and the inspiration for that comes from other great wines made around the world. And so there's a number of factors.
You left out a very important one.
Which was, my darling?
You need a good site.
Oh,
You need a good vineyard
location.
site.
So all of those things, you have to have this. It's not serendipity. You can manage it, but you need to have a number of factors working in your favour to produce a great wine. That's the way of it. It doesn't happen easily, and so the lesson is work hard in all those things, get all those factors right, and you give yourself a chance of doing it.
Moving forward towards the future of packaging wines, does your philosophy able to fulfill this following category, which I'm going to name right now? Today, wines are now being manufactured and being packaged either in plastic bottles, tin cans. Some of them are packaged with screw caps, and of course, we still have the corks. Now, are you in favor in having the screw caps, tin can wines, and also in plastic wine bottles?
That's a very easy answer. All our wines are sealed with screw cap. We are completely converted to the screw cap technology. It's probably not the end in wine bottling technology. It definitely isn't. But for the moment, we're very committed to the screw cap technology.
I think Claire's right. I mean, The screw cap is a proven good closure for wine, and both whites and reds will be aged safely and will develop all the right characters over time with a screw cap, and it's more consistent and more reliable than cork. But that's a slightly different argument to whether it's appropriate that wine be packaged into plastic bottles or into aluminium cans or whatever. I think it's important to understand, though, that the consumption of wine in the traditional sense, which is from a glass 750ml bottle, or predominantly 750ml bottle with a cork, is still a good thing. But these days we have alternatives. So 750ml glass bottles with screw caps, just as good or probably better than corks. And then let's just think for a minute, well, where are we going to be taking our wine? Where will we be drinking it? Well, we might be drinking it at the swimming pool. Is it really a good idea to have wine in a glass container at the swimming pool? Maybe not. Why can't we take it in a plastic bottle that won't smash, or in a metal can that won't smash? And realistically, if you're not intending to, if the wine that you want to drink at that particular moment is not one that you want to age in the cellar for 20 years, then why not take it in a practical vessel that's suitable for what you're doing? That doesn't mean that plastic bottles are the only container for wines, but it means that they have their place. It's like small plastic bottles on aeroplanes. If you want one or two glasses of wine on a flight on an aeroplane, a little plastic bottle's the ideal container.
But there probably needs to be more research done about the plastic bottles and the metal cans, because we do need to trial whether these are suitable containers for wine. The materials you're enclosing the wine in need to be non-scalping and non-tainting. So there's research to be done. It has, after all, taken us a very long time to accept the screw cap, and the first screw cap wines were sealed in Australia in the 70s, and they weren't accepted because people considered them as it's just like cool drink bottles, and there wasn't the romance there. But in the intervening years, there's been plenty of research done and plenty of trials that have shown that these wines won't be tainted with the modern materials that are used for the screw cap, and that they will age. And we ourselves have proven just recently that these wines will age under screw cap. We've been putting some of our wines under screw cap since 2000, the year 2000, and we've also got comparative samples that have been sealed with cork of exactly the same wine, and we have seen the aging characters being shown in the wines when we taste them, of the older wines, and with our conclusion at the moment is that the screw cap will seal consistently, and the cork is not so consistent. If you get a good cork that seals well and it isn't tainted, then you will have a successfully aged bottled wine. But if you have a good seal, you will have an oxidised wine. And if you get a cork, unfortunately, that's tainted, you will have a ruined wine. So that really has been our decision with the screw cap seal. But we haven't trialled cans or plastic bottles, although I do have a good friend who likes to go very upmarket camping, and he's really waiting for us to put Mosswood wine in plastic bottles or metal cans. So we need to look into it.
For our viewers who are wanting to know, for them to find out more about your winery, and also the last thing they have in mind is uh, do your wines pair well with Asian cuisine?
Yes,
Sure.
Yeah, sure. And
definitely.
have you tried any good Asian cuisine with your wines yet?
Oh, absolutely.
Lots
Gosh,
and
yes.
lots.
We're
We've been selling wine into Asia for about the last 30 years, and we come and visit uh, in Asia frequently, and we're often pairing our wines with ours and other wines with a wide range of Asian cuisine. And I know that Keith has a really good story about an Indonesian man who
oh, yeah. Well, I think
really it describes it.
yeah. Look, I think we fuss too much about the influence of spices and the ability of wine to cope with that. And last year, for example, we had mosswood with a really spicy duck's blood dish in Taipei, and goose feet, and so we've definitely drunk our wine in a dinner and tasting situation with some exotic Asian dishes. And my story really relates to the explanation I got from a very dear friend of ours, Robert Chong, who has been Indonesian originally but lived in Australia nearly all his life, and runs an export company that sends wine out of Australia to Indonesia. And years ago I was out to dinner with Robert, and it was on my first visit to Indonesia, out to dinner with Robert, and he was eating lots of chili. And I said to him, Rob, how is it that you can still taste the wine after eating that? He said, well, I'm used to it. I'm accustomed to having the spices in all the foods, so it doesn't really affect the way I taste other things. And I thought, well, of course, if we become accustomed to the spices, then we'll learn how to drink wine with spicy food. And guess what? It works, Robin. So we will now drink mosswood wine with just about any dish, literally. And we're not the least bit concerned whether it's spicy or not, because we're used to it. So, I mean, obviously we're keen fans of Asian food, and we'll eat just about any of the Asian cuisines. And so we tried this. It's been an extensive program, and we honestly would recommend people to be much more adventurous in terms of pairing wine with Asian food, because we found that you can get used to it and it will work.
And not only mosswood wine. Yesterday we were drinking Austrian wine with Chinese food at the Jade restaurant, and we had some Grüne Veltliner with some of the more seafood dishes, and we had some beautiful Austrian Pinot with a beef dish, I think, beef and noodle stew.
It was,
dish.
yeah, it was.
And that it
Beef
was,
and beef and black bean sauce.
yeah, and it was beautiful and beautifully paired. And I don't think you have to be too cut and dried with any of the pairing situations with wine, because I mean I have just said that we had the Grüne Veltliner, so the white wine with.
Hi, welcome to the National Quiz Choice Online News, and today we have Mr. Keith and Claire Muckfoot from Mosswood Vineyard from Australia, and they're going to tell us more about their vineyard right after this.
With some beef, but myself, when I choose from a menu, I don't choose a white wine specifically to go with white meat. I tend to choose the food that I want to eat on the menu and the wine that I want to drink on the menu for the quality of both. And I think sometimes you get wine and food synergies, and sometimes you get wine and food contrasts, and they're both good. They can both be fun. it's like wearing clothes. You know, you can wear matching clothes, or you can wear contrasting clothes, and they can both be right. It's just the enjoyment of both.
Oh, amazing. And so before we close, Mr. Keith, could you also tell us when 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 you first um, make wines, what was your very first wine that you tasted?
Gosh, well,
Was it the Cabernet Sauvignon or?
well, the first Mosswood wine I tried was actually Mosswood Semillon, 1977, and that was when I was still a student in South Australia. The first Bordeaux wine I ever tried was 1966 Chateau Palmer.
Do you still have any of that in your cellar?
No, sadly, no, I don't. So I mean, I can think of special occasions where I tried wines, important wines for the first time, and but the actual first one I tried, I must have been with my mum and dad at McLaren Vale, probably. It was a McLaren Vale red wine of some sort, I suppose. But
Every time you make a trip to Asia, what will be the one dish that you cannot live without pairing with your wine?
Peking duck.
yeah, that'll do. Yeah,
Peking
absolutely.
duck, plum sauce.
Yeah, we'll have that
Beautiful.
anytime.
Goes
Yeah.
with everything.
Yeah.
Chardonnay, Pinot, Cabernet. It, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a
It's a
wonderful
really,
meal.
really interesting point. It's the because it depends a little bit on the way the sauce is made and so on. But yeah, Peking duck is it's delicate, but it's flavoursome. It's not too spicy, and it's yummy. And yeah, you can eat that with any of our wines for sure. But I mean, we're quite happy to have Sichuan lamb with any of our red wines in particular.
Yes.
Any plans to steal that recipe and bring it back to Australia?
If you've got the contacts, we'll follow it up. Don't you worry.
I must admit that I don't think I'd ever attempt to make Peking duck or Szechuan lamb, but most importantly Peking duck, because I just think, that those who do make it so well, and I could never emulate that in my kitchen.
Remembering, of course, there are some fantastic Asian chefs in Australia, and so one of the reasons we have this familiarity and association with high quality Asian food styles in general is because they are quite widely represented in Australia now. And so there's some fantastic, for example, Cantonese restaurants in Melbourne where you can eat some of the finest Cantonese food. In fact, probably one of Australia's finest Cantonese restaurants, and I use Cantonese just as an example, is the Mi Wah, which is in Hobart in Tasmania. So we're really lucky that we get exposure to these things, and so you can get fantastic Peking duck, for example, at these really fine restaurants in Australia, as indeed you can get, just about any of the other Asian cuisines. The Straits style cooking that you see a bit of here in Singapore, you certainly see it in Australia. Yum cha has become a big thing in Australia, and so we've always wondered, haven't we, what wine can we encourage people to have with their yum cha, even though it's mostly tea, of course, but it's such a social thing, yum cha. It would be great if we could incorporate wine into that family ceremony, or that family fun, not ceremony, that family fun.
So what's next for Mosswood? Do you have any plans for yourself, Mr. Keith and Claire, to write a coffee table book about cuisines paired with your wines, or recipes, or biography? Is there any plans for that?
No, I don't think so. I think we maybe leave that to those who write well.
People who can write.
Yeah. And yes, I think well, we have a friend, Frances Andrich, who takes beautiful photographs of the area, and she does beautiful coffee table books about the area. So I think maybe her pictures tell a better story than our words.
Yeah, look, I'd agree with Claire. I think that our expertise is in wine production, and I mean, we're really lucky that we enjoy the wine and food culture, and make no mistake, we have a lot of fun with that. But I'm not sure that we're really the people to be writing about it, Robin.
Yeah, no, we'd rather people drink our wine than try to struggle through one of our poor attempts at a book.
Yeah.
Well, once again, thank you for joining us here at the National Critics' Choice, and this program is sponsored by the Hilton International. And once again, we hope to see you in the next episode.
Good on you, Robin.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.